Welcome back to Weekly with Wick. We're picking up and continuing the conversation that we had from last week. Still with us is Heidi, Shawn, and Courtney discussing a lot of the concerns that our community have. The goal is not total agreement, but is really just being transparent in our beliefs and modeling what a kind conversation looks like, all under the auspices of our Love Local movement. Ladies, thank you for continuing the conversation, and Dr. Wick, thank you for addressing and answering these questions, and also always thank you for being here.
Hi, I'm Courtney Abbasi. I am the owner of Bud's Jollycomb. With the constant yo-yo of moving up and down in the state's tiered system, how does this truly protect our community when it's such a detriment to so many businesses? And I believe your response was something along the lines of, we can't really control the tiered system. We just have to keep moving with the punches with that.
I think that would be a good way to approach it. But we may not be able to control it. But if we all do our part, we will move more quickly to the less restrictive tiers.
So with that being said, all the businesses that have been affected by the tiered system, the constant indoor, outdoor. My business, we have a great setup. I was very lucky in that aspect that I only had to shut down my outside. My production never changed. I had to shut down my inside. My production didn't change. My food display never changed. I still did everything exactly the same way. So I'm very grateful for that. But I do know very many people that I am friends with that have had to change everything, their whole system, like to go all outdoor, the stress of finding help and the stress of making sure that their employees that they care about are taken care of when they are completely shut down, whether that's getting them on unemployment, paying them from their checking account because that's what they felt they needed to do. I guess one of my main concerns is, I'm trying to think of the best way to say it. How can we really keep going so back and forth? I feel like there's gonna be a point where people are just gonna stop. They're just gonna either shut down completely or just do whatever they want. And how do we move forward with that?
I think we're already seeing that because people are so frustrated, and we've seen that throughout the whole international scene, that the people have progressive COVID fatigue, meaning they're tired of hearing about COVID. They're doing whatever they want. Mm-hmm. And as a result of that, that's where we're starting to see the huge increase in COVID-19 cases. Now, remember that if you're not the individual that has COVID-19, it doesn't affect you. But as soon as you have COVID-19, all of a sudden your world changes. And so how are we going to deal with that? And that's so frustrating for us. The reason that the systems have been set up the way they have been are based on epidemiologic evidence. In other words, we know that individuals sitting in an inside restaurant, sitting close together, sitting for an hour or so eating, their exposure can be very significant. We know that if people have the social distancing in the restaurant, you have 25-50% capacity, and the servers are wearing masks when they serve them and stuff like that, the incidence is very low. So that the problem is to get enough of the businesses doing the right things so that our numbers go down, we can move to a less restrictive tier. And if we keep people on that behavior, we'll continue to move to a less restrictive tier. The problem is that when we have people that say it doesn't apply to me and I can do anything I want, then we have other individuals who feel the same way. And then pretty soon our numbers go up and they move us to a more restrictive tier. It's very frustrating to all of us, not just the businesses, but all of us.
Mm-hmm. Isn't it true, though, as I understood it from some of the previous videos, you talked about the contact tracing, not showing that we're getting it in restaurants and in other places like that. So is it fair to continue to punish the restaurants when that's not where we're having the issues?
So first of all, let me point out that I have not made any rules or recommendations above what the state has already given.
Right.
The county has the ability to make things more restrictive instead of less restrictive. The county has, based on our experience, for instance, we helped spearhead the fact that beauty salons and barber shops could stay open, because we showed that even with an individual being positive, they were doing all the right things, and we were seeing no cases as a result of that. Now, although we've not had any direct experience from restaurants locally, there are numerous cases within the state of California where there have been COVID-19 cases associated with the restaurant. I mean, large numbers. It's not small numbers. So I sit on a committee for the small counties, and I'm advocating for the small counties. It's one of the reasons we got the tier system to change so that it's less restrictive for the small counties. We've actually advocated for the restaurants to open for the very reasons that you've said. The state has felt, based on the numbers overall, they're not willing to do that, particularly when they look and see our case rate is going up. So for them, it would be like adding fuel to the fire, knowing that if you did open things up more like that, then people kind of forget about what they're supposed to do. The restaurants are now open. We got 50% capacity. We don't have to wear our masks anymore. We can do what we want to do. And then we start seeing a surge in cases. So, I mean, I'm just telling you the rationale that the state's using as they apply these things. So we fought valiantly for things locally. And we've been turned down on many occasions in terms of what we have suggested. And as a result of us being turned down, those businesses then have got totally frustrated and they've gone more rogue. And that makes the situation even worse. So it's like having a bad child, and you try to discipline and they don't discipline, and then they just act out more. And that's kind of how the state looks at us, you know, in this situation. It's like, you guys can't control those people. Why should we give you more freedom?
I can't be on a podcast that we say bad child.
So with following up with that, where does it end? Do you see an end? Are we always going to be on a tiered system where we open and close until we find a mandated vaccination, or what do you see being an end result here?
Well, I think that a year from now, we're going to see similar things, but hopefully enough people will have chosen to get vaccinated that we will see the coronavirus die out in the community. We do know from the studies that have been done, it's going to probably take anywhere between 50 and 70% of the community to get vaccinated to get enough immunity for the coronavirus to basically die out. So does that mean everybody has to get vaccinated? No, but we got to get enough to stop it. And so there will be people certainly that will choose to be vaccinated, and there will be people who choose not to. But all of these things that we're doing, like this, the distancing and stuff, only protects you from getting the disease. It does not cure you. It does not give you any immunity.
So we should be anticipating this for at least another year.
It's actually said that it will probably be still a year from now that there's going to be some sort of restrictions. Hopefully, as the vaccine gets out there, we'll have a significant decrease in number of cases, and we'll move to very less restrictive tiers. We'll be able to open everything up. What's that going to mean for the businesses in the end? Boy, you know, I feel really bad for them, because there's going to be businesses that are going to go under for sure. There's already lots that have. On the other hand, there are businesses that have become so innovative since this has come on that they're changing the whole way that they do business. And I think that's going to happen too. It's just a matter of evolution. And I can tell you, when this is all over, I don't think that people are going to be rushing to the cinemas to watch movies. I don't think people are going to be rushing to go out to eat. People are cooking more at home. They're doing different things. I think you're going to see a change in people's lifestyle. Whether that's what we want or not, I think it's going to come about because of everything people have experienced.
Do you anticipate more businesses to go rogue?
I think that's what's going to happen. If I was a business owner, I would be totally frustrated too. And you have to end up making your decision. What are you going to do? And whether it's right or wrong, you make your decision and you live with the consequences.
Thank you.
Are you in agreement with the metrics that the state has for COVID?
In terms of metrics, meaning what?
The way that they're tracking and moving us through the tiers based on the numbers and the percentages per day and whatnot.
I can tell you that we've had countless hours of discussion with the state and all the health officers before those came out. And believe me, there's a lot of contention about a lot of that. And what I can say is that was probably the best solution to the worst situation. None of us like it, but we think that it represents a valid scientific approach. And for everybody that it's helped, there's equal number that it hurt.
Placer County and Riverside County have both taken steps to create their own, not rules, so to speak, but their own plan. They've decided they don't want the CARES Act funding, and they've developed their own plans for opening safely based on their own numbering system. Is that ever something you would consider doing with county leaders and citizens and businesses in this county?
So let's just put that into perspective. Riverside County got all their CARES money already because they got the federal dollars directly. Tehama County gets their CARES money through the state. So they have already got their present, same I believe with Placer County, so they can thumb their nose, they can choose to do what they want. There is no penalty for it except that they'll lose their vehicle license fees. But I would point out in Riverside County, a number of weeks ago, infection rate was very high. They asked the state to step in and help. The state sent teams down there to basically rescue them because they were being overwhelmed. And how do you think the state's going to feel when the county says, we can do this all on our own, and then when they run into another big situation, they go to the state, well, we thought we could do the job, but we can't. We took the money, but we didn't do what we were supposed to. So now will you come and help us?
So
I
is
don't
that a
know
no?
what the answer is going to be.
Is that a no, though? That you wouldn't be willing, you wouldn't be
I don't have any
open to that?
I don't
kind of-
have any control over that. That's totally county administrative. That has nothing to do with my job as health officer.
So if I can convince the county administrative, you'd be willing to have those discussions with us?
If you can convince the county administration to move forward like that, we're more than open to discussion. However, I don't think from a financial standpoint we could withstand that. I think the effect economically would be very devastating to the county. We don't have the money like Riverside County and Placer County. And if you look at the Healthy Persons Index, which is based on socioeconomic, so education, things like that, you look at where Placer County is and where Riverside County is, and then you look at Tehama County. It would be devastating to us.
You think? Okay.
So, but yeah, I mean, you take a look at LA County. You know, they got all their money in advance, but they've not gone rogue. You know, they've actually worked on developing guidelines that are in conjunction with the state, and they have a lot of input too. So,
LA County
LA
has a lot
County.
of input? LA County has, I have the data in here somewhere, but it's like they're 25% of the population, 35% of the cases still, and 46% of the deaths. So
Correct.
I'm not,
So, but
Thinking
the point
they're
is that
right.
they're a large county, they got all their money,
right,
but they're following the guidelines because they know they have a problem. So it's not just about the money. In Riverside County, it's about the politics of opening the businesses. And that, I mean, we all want to see the businesses open. But what we want to see is we want to see the businesses to be able to open and stay open. It does us no good to open the businesses and 2 weeks later tell them they have to shut down. They've got 3 days to get rid of their perishables. Now we've taken a bad situation and made it worse. So I think our common goal is we want to see the businesses survive. As we've talked about before, you know, I've been here a long time. I've seen a lot of things happen here. I'm concerned about this community. There are people that are saying that, you know, what we're doing is bad for the community. We all want to be friends afterwards. You know what? We all want to be friends, but we also want to be alive. We want to be able to function. We don't want to be a community that's now ill from a disease that's gone through. And if you look at what's happening, because people don't really realize this, but we're seeing a lot of the people that become COVID-19 positive may have a mild case, but now we're seeing 20 to 30% of them having persistent neurologic problems. And we're seeing 20 to 50% of those that are tested to having heart problems that are going to be long-term. And we're talking about healthy people getting this. So are we going to be a community that 10 years from now, we're going to have a lot of invalids because we didn't do what we needed to do? You know, people have said, well, so what if the old person gets it and dies off? I mean, they've lived their life and stuff. But what about all the young people that get it and are going to be left with something down the road? We don't know the answer to that, but are you willing to take that chance on your future? Are you willing to offer that to your child? I don't think we are. So again, we're just trying to make decisions looking into the future. It's like the parents saying, you know, I'm having you do this because, and the child says, why because? And, you know, sometimes we just hopefully have a little bit more knowledge that the child may not understand, and we're making the decision for them. Sometimes it's right, sometimes it's wrong, but we have to live with our decision. So
with all that being said, how many in our county have died with COVID as opposed from COVID? Does that make sense?
yes. So we've had this discussion before because the way that it's defined, and the CDC defined this in March, anybody who is COVID positive and dies is counted as a COVID-19 positive death.
Okay.
So those individuals may have other health problems. And so that what's actually happened is some of the health officers some counties have forensic pathologists, and so they've reviewed every death certificate. And so none of this is being reported any differently than we report influenza cases. So this is all the same as we do. And so if anybody has COVID-19 on their death certificate, it's counted as a COVID-19 death. And again, there may be other extenuating circumstances, but since we're doing it the same as we always do, then you should be able to interpret it the same way.
Okay.
but how many we've had 8 deaths?
Correct.
Okay. How many of them have been strictly COVID?
Of
And
the
how
8
many of them has COVID symptoms played a
All 8 of
factor
them. All 8 of them basically had COVID symptoms
at the time of death?
at the time of death.
Are any of them strictly COVID, or were they other conditions?
We actually had a healthy gentleman in his 50s whose only problem was he had mild high blood pressure. He died of COVID. We've had other people in their 50s who have relatively no health problems and have died. Then we've had people in their 70s and 80s. We had a gentleman in his 80s who was very sick with COVID. He survived. He was treated and survived. So not, and they all had all the rest of them had comorbid conditions. Maybe they had diabetes, something else like that. But, when you get older, most people have other
Right.
health issues.
Right.
So, it's hard to find somebody that doesn't. Does it play a role in their death? Well, sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. We've actually had to sit with the physicians and go over things because sometimes they would report things out that were incorrect in the order that they were on the death certificate. And the death certificates are all used for epidemiologic purposes. So we want to make sure that people get it in the right order. So if it turns out that the underlying cause was COVID-19 as the cause of death, that should be the last thing that's listed. If they developed respiratory failure, if they had pneumonia, those kind of things in advance. So I can tell you that the death certificates have actually been completed correctly, that the state has actually reviewed them, and we actually had consultation on one because I was concerned because the individual had coexisting cancer and was out of the hospital for 2 days and died. But the state reviewed everything and they said it's a COVID-19 death. So we're not trying to pad the numbers by any means. We're being very careful as we look at them.
And we're not, I think, questioning that.
Right.
I think.
I was just wondering what the numbers
I think
are.
everybody in the county has a pretty strong understanding that you are working hard to make the numbers right. I know that several death certificates have gone to Sacramento, and I know that that's because you're questioning them, and we appreciate that. I think we just want to know, death certificate aside, how many of them are genuinely from COVID, being first on the list as opposed to being last on the list.
No, so being last on the list means that's the underlying cause of death. Being first on the list would be like you can't breathe, respiratory failure, pneumonia, things like that. But the underlying cause would be COVID-19. And that's what I'm saying. All of them, the underlying cause was COVID-19. Yeah. And our first death did not occur in county. It was the person died out of county, but was a county resident.
Okay.
And so the way
So
that
that's-
works is wherever the person's place of residence when they die, that's where it's counted. So for instance, if a person's a long-term resident of a skilled nursing home, if they're from Shasta County but they're in our nursing home and die, that's our death. Vice versa. The other thing that the state has said because of the fires, if we get people who are COVID-19 positive, because the teams have been out now for a long period of time, it's counted where they contract the disease.
Right.
So, when we have 1,500 firefighters out there and they turn up positive, some of them, and they're here in our county, they're counted against us. Not that we had anything to do with it, but it's
Right.
still, they're trying to even the playing field everywhere. So all of us have a little bit of pain, some more than others.
I think there's been a lot of confusion around that first death because the what has been repeatedly said is that it was a man from somewhere else traveling through Red Bluff, died in our hospital, and there's been a lot of confusion. So
Yeah.
I really appreciate you
Yeah.
clearing that up.
Yeah, he did not die in our hospital. He died in Shasta County, and he was a resident
He was
of
a
Tehama
resident.
County.
That makes
But I have to tell
total
you,
sense.
this is an individual who is very mobile. So although he was a resident of Tehama County for a while, he also had another address somewhere but had not been living there.
Gotcha.
And we have to sort all those things out because we want to be transparent and report it to the public correctly. We want you to know when you see our numbers that we're not trying to pull the wool over anybody's eyes. And that's been so frustrating for us because we strive so hard to make sure that you can see everything. And what it's done is it's created a lot of confusion. There is so much information out there that people start looking at it and they go, my God, what does this mean? So, you look at all that stuff and it's just mind-boggling. Then 2 weeks later, it might all
It
change.
shifts again.
So I have another question for you. And I'm just going to say it's hard for me to say this question, so I'm going to put that out there. I was a positive COVID-19 case in late July. I was gratefully asymptomatic, and those I was near, including my parents, my husband, were also tested negative. I have to thank you and your staff because, first of all, if I didn't have a husband in healthcare to understand, and B, if your amazing nurse didn't spend 7 hours on the phone with us to help us understand, it would have been hard. So I think that is a huge takeaway to thank them. There was a lot of shame that I felt. Did I do something wrong? Thankfully, I didn't cause any more harm than I know of. Messaging from national level, state level, and local communities and my local circles. I want us to be held accountable, right? I want everything we just talked about, because baseline, I want our families and our children healthy, and for us to be healthy, we need to be in the community. To be in the community, we need to do it safely so that we can be in the community. I also want us to figure out a way that we can locally support not shaming. And I'm wondering if you have talked about that within public health, or I don't even know if it's a question, or just if you could lean into that for me and help me figure that out.
Well, we know that shaming doesn't work. It's, when you scold somebody, it doesn't work. When you reward them, it works. So one of the things that we've done is we've tried to say to the businesses, if you're doing a good job, then we let people know you're doing a good job. When we hear compliments about you, we tell them that you're doing a good job. And we've tried to do that. We've tried to do that with some of our social media, some of our other outreach that we've been doing, because we need to do that. But I will tell you that we've had a number of cases where somebody's been positive and the shaming came from a lot of their friends. And the shaming went like this: if I would have known that, I wouldn't have gone over to your place. And it's like, that's not the way you should think. What you should think is that, okay, this is potentially COVID-19 positive, so we need to treat it like that. Why do you want to shame somebody afterwards? It's not their fault. But then we've had situations where people have been knowingly positive and invite people over and do things like that. So I don't know what to say, but the goal is not to shame people. It just doesn't work.
I appreciate that a lot, and I think that is huge, and maybe something we can all lift up, and I personally am going to try and lift up and find the places, the outlets that you're saying, the social media, and things where we are highlighting the folks that are working hard to do the best we can so that we can follow the guidelines and open up. So that's my takeaway. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Weekly with WICK, because we believe that an engaged community is a vibrant community. And this episode was brought to you in part by Expect More Tehama and our friends at the Foundation of Northern California. Please be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and even visit our website at expectmoretehama.com. If you have any questions, you can comment or even leave us a DM on Facebook and Instagram of Expect More Tehama.